I'm Lee, and this is NASA Now, the International Space Station Medical Project. What is it, and what are we learning about humans in space? And why do astronauts have to exercise in space? That's ahead. First, here's what's happening at NASA Now. Let the experiments begin.
3, 2, 1, drop.
Dropping in a microgravity environment or dime competition have these high school students excited to learn more about things like the effects of microgravity on the motion of air bubbles in water.
Coming here was a great experience. There's not a lot of things you can do in school that you could replicate at a NASA facility like this.
It's fun and it's educational. I think it's easier to learn this way.
Student teams from around the country participated at the National Science Competition held in the 2.2-second drop tower at NASA's Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. Hey, now let's take a look at the past.
It was back in 1998 when the first two modules of the International Space Station were launched and joined together in orbit. The first crew arrived in the year 2000. Today, the ISS draws on the resources and scientific expertise of 16 nations from around the world.
Living in space is unlike any place on Earth. The effects on human beings is constantly being monitored and studied. Here to give us a physical perspective about life in space is operations lead for the International Space Station Medical Project from Johnson Space Center, Dr. Liz Warren.
I'm Dr. Liz Warren. I am the operations lead for the International Space Station Medical Project. The mission of the Human Research Program is to conduct science and develop technologies that allow astronauts to live and work productively in space. There's a difference between short-duration spaceflight and long-duration spaceflight in the way that the astronauts' bodies are affected. A short-duration spaceflight, say on a space shuttle, is about 2 weeks. On the International Space Station, astronauts stay a lot longer, up to 6 months. Living in space has a negative effect. Microgravity is not very good for the human body. There's an old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, this is also very true for bones and muscles and the cardiovascular system. Bones in particular are only as strong as they need to be. In the microgravity environment of space, there's not really much work for the muscles and the bones to do. So astronauts' bodies get weaker or decondition in space. Essentially, it's your body, or the astronauts' bodies, being efficient and not wasting energy on something that they don't need. Our bodies are very accustomed to living in a 1G environment. So we do a lot of exercise while we're in space, at least 2 hours a day, and that helps to maintain bone, muscle, and cardiovascular fitness. The types of exercise include aerobic fitness and resistance or weightlifting. Now it's a little bit tricky. There's no such thing as weightlifting in a weightless environment, but they use resistance. The exercise equipment is similar to the exercise equipment that you might see in a gym here on Earth, but it's designed a little bit differently because it has to work in a microgravity environment. For example, running on a treadmill sounds pretty easy here on Earth, but in space, think about it, if you were to run on a treadmill, you'd float right off of it. So we actually have designed a harness that is very much like a backpack strap that holds the astronauts down to the surface of the treadmill. When astronauts return to Earth, they undergo a vigorous rehabilitation period, basically brought back to their strength that they were before flight. They exercise at least 2 hours a day, pretty vigorously. Much of the research that we do in space is very applicable to humans here on Earth. Essentially, we study astronauts as they get weaker and then as they get stronger. Well, that happens to humans as well. For example, osteoporosis. Osteoporosis means weakening of the bones. We know that this occurs in a lot of people here on Earth, and it also occurs in astronauts. So if we can figure out how to prevent osteoporosis or bone weakening in the astronauts, perhaps we can also apply that here on Earth.
Did you know that the International Space Station orbits Earth 16 times a day? That's approximately 5,840 times a year. The International Space Station is expected to stay in orbit through 2020.
Now it's time to check out what's up.
Do you want to see the International Space Station in action? Check out this website for times in your region. You can actually see the ISS as it crosses the sky above you.
Physical fitness is important on and off the International Space Station. Here's a great exercise to get your students into the act.
Muscles and Bones offers teachers 10 activities that help students understand how the body's muscles and bones work. The activities in this guide help students explore important questions related to muscles and bones in living things, such as, do you know which foods have lots of calcium for your bones? What are you doing to keep your muscles strong? And how do your bones and muscles work together? Check out the NASA Explorer School's virtual campus for these great activities.
Well, that's it for NASA Now. Be sure to tune in next week when we learn about Expedition 27. We'll see you then on NASA Now.
NASA Now comes to you from the virtual campus at NASA Explorer Schools.